link with the people. I said that yep. Are you connected? Is your thing on?
Yeah, I think so. Is it? Yeah. Okay. All right. Inshallah. All right. Inshallah. Please recite aloud salawat. Inshallah. Muhammad. Inshallah. So we'll get started for tonight with a hadith that Brother Abdullah has kindly shared with me, inshallah, and then hopefully we can. What we like to do is just open the floor and discuss this hadith. We'll read it in Arabic, then translate it, and then we can open it up for comments and perhaps try to analyze the hadith in a way that applies to us today, inshallah. So this is a hadith from the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, he's addressing Imam Ali, and he says, Ya Ali, إذا تقرب الناس إلى خالقهم في أبواب البر فتقرب بأنواع العقل. Right? If you, oh Ali, if you see the people trying to get close to Allah, trying to achieve proximity to Allah through various actions of various basically different types of bir. What is bir? Bir means righteousness or piety, right? When you see the people trying to get close to Allah through doing various acts of piety, then try to seek the nearness to Allah through doing the various acts of intelligence, basically trying to exert your intelligence in different ways to understand your Lord, right? تسبقهم بالدرجات والزلفى عند الناس في الدنيا وعند الله في الآخرة. By doing so, by going after the aql, right, and trying to connect to Allah through rationality, you will exceed, you will supersede, you will surpass the people who are just doing actions that are basically pious, right? By using your intellect, by trying to use your rationality, you will beat all the people who are trying to just achieve that closeness to Allah through ibadah, through basically worship of God, right? And you will achieve closeness to people in this world, right? Closeness and status with Allah on the Day of Judgment, right? So this is the hadith that's mentioned here. وفي مشكاة الأنوار يا علي إذا تقرب العباد إلى خالقهم بالبر فتقرب إليه بالعقل تسبقهم. Again, same idea. Oh Ali, this is from Mishkat, hadith book that we have. Oh Ali, when you see the servants of Allah trying to get close to Allah through doing actions that are righteous, then try to get close to Allah through your intelligence, right? By doing so, you will surpass the other people. إِنَّا مَعَاشِرَ الْأَنْبِيَاء نُكَلِّمُ النَّاسَ عَلَى قَدْرِ عُقُولِهِم. We, the prophets, we especially, we the nation of the prophets, we speak to the people in accordance to the level of their intellect, right? So first off, I think let's just open up this discussion a little bit. So notice here, right, it says in this hadith, يا علي إذا تقرب الناس إلى خالقهم في أبواب البر فتقرب بأنواع العقل, right? So this is very interesting. What do you guys think? It's saying that when you see people trying to go towards Allah and doing various acts of piety, then try to seek that proximity with Allah through various types of intelligence. Anwa' al-aql, right? What do you guys think about that? Different types of intelligence? What do you think that means?
There's like doors of righteousness, which is easy to understand.
Yeah.
Doors of righteousness, you do sadaqah, you do prayer, you do something good for somebody. But types of intellect, I've never heard of that.
Anwa' al-aql, right?
That's an interesting term.
What do you guys think about that? That's pretty interesting, right?
To ponder about your Lord.
Ponder about your Lord?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, try to think much beyond just doing good acts. Like, increase your potential.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, but specifically that phrase, types of intellect. Are there types of intellect, or does that mean with your ascension, does your intellect improve? And so yesterday's intellect was different than today's intellect. Is that what they're referring to, or? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand it. Like the types of intellect.
Yeah. What do you guys think? Any other comments? Anwa'ul aql, right? Anwa' is a plural of naw'. Naw' in Arabic means type, right? So various types of intellect, right? If we're going to translate the word aql as intellect, right? That would be how we render this. What do you guys think of that phraseology there?
So if I understand it correctly, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he is talking to alayhi Islam,
Yeah.
and he's saying when you're addressing the people, sort of conduct your language in a way that like appeases their like types of intellect. Is that what he's saying? The hadith?
Well, the hadith is no. The hadith is saying that when you see people trying to get close to Allah through doing various acts of piety, then try to achieve that proximity with Allah for yourself. Try to achieve that same proximity, but through various types of intelligence, right?
Oh, okay.
So various types of rationality. So the question is, what does this mean? Various types of rationality.
Like, I think of like EQ and IQ immediately.
Okay.
It's the intuitive. Like emotional intelligence, maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
that's like a thing that's happening today. It's like, oh, there's different types of intelligence, which is like emotional versus IQ,
Yeah.
right?
Maybe like from different perspectives. Like think of it from the perspective of an atheist, a Christian. I don't know.
Okay.
Or do like
Oh.
think about it from all angles, not just your own Muslim
Yeah.
perspective.
Also, I would probably add the sincerity would be there because just as an example, when you ask for something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then obviously there's multiple ways you can ask. You can read the dua and then ask. You can, praise Allah for it. And then, you can do multiple things for you to, ask Allah to give it to you. But at the end of the day, I feel like, and that would be like my own experience as well, when I would ask Allah sincerely from my mind and, understanding that, at the end of the day, He's in charge of everything. Um, if you sincerely just ask it from your heart, He's going to give it to you regardless. You don't have to, perform some specific sort of ibadas because I think the sincerity itself, knowing that, having that taqwa, tawakkul in Allah is just one of the best sort of ibadas you can have anyways, right? So I think that would be another option.
So you're saying
Ahsan,
sincerity
yeah,
is kind
that's
of
very
where
good.
your actions have equated with your intellect and things are kind of uniform. So you're actually asking God through your intellect. I would actually say if you're sincere in something, it's by your highest level of intellect. It may not be a high level of intellect because everyone has different levels of intellect, but it would be your highest level of intellect if you're actually sincere in something. So that's actually very interesting that you truly mean it when you actually connect versus okay, I'm just gonna do the sajda. I read that if you do the sajda, you get this thing. So I'm gonna do the sajda, but you haven't actually thought about what Allah is.
Although I would say it doesn't mean that you have to be in sajda to get it, but I would personally say I would feel the most connection when I am in sajda because I think that is the closest point when you are with Allah is the sajda. So I think going to the sajda and asking definitely helps.
But I was thinking as an example. So
Yeah.
just like you hold the subha, oh, you're gonna get this
Yeah,
reward.
of course.
But without thinking about the inner meaning, like you said. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, that's very good points, mashallah. You guys all have very interesting things to say. I think one thing is, first you have to look at the word aql, right? What does aql actually mean in Arabic, right? So aql, anybody know what that root means? The word
We
aql?
spoke about it before, so people, if they were listening, they would know.
Yeah.
Or Arabs out there should know.
I would say again, most as I mentioned earlier, from Azerbaijan language, so most of them taken from Arabic.
Yeah.
In our language, the word aghaw
Mm-hmm.
means cleverness.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's just again I guess it would correspond with the word intelligence. I would say so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cleverness is a great way to look at the word. Rationality. A lot of people translate the word aql, right, as a rationality or intelligence, but aql in Arabic, the root meaning actually means to tie something, right? So, like for instance, there's a very famous hadith from the Prophet, right, where basically he says "i'qil thumma tawakkal," right? First tie your basically "i'qil naqatak," first tie your camel, thumma tawakkal, then have tawakkul, right? First tie your camel. So this concept of aql has a sense of tying something down, right? It's a sense of like apprehension, like you're kind of grasping something, right? You're tying it down in your mind, like you're actually developing a tasawwur or basically a conception of it, such that it's now part of your mind, right? It's part of your understanding, right? So this is what aql is. Aql is that that thing which connects you. It connects you to the external world, right? It helps you understand the things that are around you, right? So that's what aql is, right? And so we can say that this is sort of one of the meanings. When people try to understand the word aql, they often translate it as rationality or intelligence, right? But you know, we have very famous hadiths, right? For instance, أول ما خلق الله العقل, right? The first thing that Allah created was the aql, right? So this aql that we know of, this rationale, it's not just in a sense. Some people, they say, look, we're atheists. They'll say we're very clever, we're very intelligent. You religious people, you're blind, right? You can't see the truth. And they claim that they are the true ashabul aql, that they're the true inheritors of the aql, and the Muslims are the ones who are backwards, right? And many people, they say that, oh, religious people, religion is the opiate of the masses, right? But we say that no, aql is that which grounds you in reality. It grounds you in the world around you. You look at the creation around you and you internalize it and you understand the connections between different things, right? And that's where the word aql comes from, that sense of connection, that sense of making a web of understanding, right? So I think that's one way you could look at this hadith, right? So anwa'ul aql, notice at the very end it says, إِنَّا مَعَاشِرَ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ نُكَلِّمُ النَّاسَ عَلَى قَدْرِ عُقُولِهِم, right? It's plural, right? That we prophets, we are commanded to speak to the people in accordance to their intellects, right? Intellects with an S, right? So the uqul is a plural of aql, right? So this is implying again that there are multiple different types of ways you can conceive of something, ways that you can apprehend, or ways that you can make connections with things in this world, right? And so exerting your aql, there's that's why, you know, many people, like, they say, okay, reading the Quran, or for instance, pondering about Allah's creation, right? It's like, okay, well, I did it and now I'm done, right? I gained the benefit. But the Quran says, وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Keep going back and reminding again and again and again, because when you do that, you start making new connections that you didn't make before. You start using your aql at new levels, at levels that you didn't think were possible, right? At first, you didn't think you could ever make that sort of connection, but all of a sudden, because you're exerting that faculty that Allah has given you, you start getting closer and closer to Him, and you open up new doors, right? So it's there's layers and levels to your intellect, right? And you can open up higher and higher levels of understanding. So that could be an understanding of this hadith as well. Anwa'ul aql, right? That different various types and levels, perhaps even, of aql, right? So what do you guys think about this? It's very interesting because it says, you see all these people going towards Allah, trying to get close to Allah because of doing righteous deeds. And you should instead, when you see people doing that, you should instead go towards Allah, try to seek proximity with Allah through your intellect. Do you think intellect is opposed to righteous deeds? I think Brother Namik, alluded to this, right? Because he said he feels that when he's in sajda, he can make that connection with Allah more, right? So, but that's an act of piety, that's an act of obedience, right? Do you think the aql is Allah, that the Holy Prophet is telling Imam Ali here, that go towards Allah with your aql when you see people going towards Allah because of, through the means of ibadah and through the means of, piety? Do you think that there's a contradiction there? What do you guys think?
I think it's important maybe who's being addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it's the case that in this case, Imam Ali alayhi salam, it would be of greater benefit to the ummah for him to use his intellect compared to other actions. So maybe it's not general to absolutely everyone. Perhaps certain people, like acts of piety would be the best use of their time. But for people at that level, it would be more beneficial for everyone else if they would spend their time using their intellect. Because he's the one being addressed in this hadith, right?
Right.
So it might be the case that for him it's better for him to do that.
Mm-hmm. So I think your point is very good, Brother Jabril. But the one question then is, don't you think that this hadith is supposed to teach us something too, or do you think it's specifically addressed just to Ali and not to the inclusion of other people?
No, I think it still might apply to this day, but it's that it answers the question of, are you saying one's better than the other? Perhaps it's not better than the other, but he would be better. His efforts would be better spent in that avenue. and perhaps people like him in that regard would be better spent in that avenue. But it's not saying that this is necessarily like better than, you know, acts of ibadah or something like that.
Yeah.
I would also mention, like, even like a little example, when you pray Salah, it's also, I feel like it's important to know that you're having a conversation with Allah. You're not just, you know, going to sajda, doing the ruku, doing the qunut. Obviously, those are also acts of ibadah, but like when you pray Salah, knowing that you're speaking with Allah, and you know, you're talking to him, you can ask him whatever you want while you're in sajda, while you're in ruku and stuff. I think that's also like partially would go towards that, because again, as a word of like act of worship, definitely Salah is you can consider Salah as a form of ibadah, right? But I feel like if you're more kind of like into as an understanding that you're not just doing it just for the sake of, you know, I'm doing this sajda and then I'm done, you know, I'm gonna do whatever I want. You do need to understand you're speaking with God, and you know, you have that you know you call it khushu,
Yes.
the
Khushu'.
conversation.
Yes, very good.
So that's
Mashallah.
like
This kind of goes back to one of our discussions we had previously, saying that when we pray or read the Quran or make a dua, we shouldn't. It's better if we know like what we're reading, like not
Yes.
just read the Arabic, but like what's behind, like what does it mean? Like for me, I don't know Arabic, but so I should know the English translation of like what I'm saying. Like when I'm in ruku, why I'm saying Subhana Rabbil Aladeen wa bihamdi, when I'm in sujood, Subhana Rabbil Ala. So
Yes.
like that's a greater level of just reading namaz or anything and not knowing what you're doing.
Right. Yes. So I think what everything you guys said, I think is very, very good. You know, so I think the key point here is that it's not saying that they're mutually exclusive, right? The Prophet's not saying that bir is one thing, it's one box, and aql is another box, right? What he's saying though is that the primary impetus or the primary drive to take you close to Allah should be your aql, right? It should be your intelligence. It should be your rational faculty. That's what drives you towards Allah, right? Whereas other people, when you see other people, their primary thing that's driving them to Allah is obedience, just trying to do righteousness, trying to be good people. Those things are all good, of course, but there's a difference between someone who does good deeds in a way that's lacks that true understanding, that intellectual insight. You know, that intellectual insight is what the Prophet is saying here, right? And there's a verse of the Quran, right, where I think the Holy Prophet is told to address the ummah, right? He says, "Qul hadihi sabili ad'u ila Allah ala basiratin ana wa man ittaba'ani," right? That this is a verse in Surah Yusuf at the very end, right? So Allah is telling the Holy Prophet, say that this is my path, right? I call to Allah, right, based on insight, based on basira. Ana wa man ittaba'ani. Myself and all those individuals who are with me, they're all calling towards Allah on the basis of basira, right? Basira is what? Insight, right? Insight requires you to have intelligence. So this is what the Holy Prophet is being commanded by Allah to say, right? That your path is not a path of blind obedience. It's a path of basira, a path of insight, where you're going closer and closer to Allah, but that connection with Allah is based on your true recognition, your true ma'rifah of who Allah is, right? So I think that's one of the very good points from this hadith. Okay, and then one last thing. Yeah.
The theme that I'm hearing is understanding. You know, you really have to understand the action that you're taking, the bir, because that actually requires intellect. To understand what you're doing, it requires intellect. So if you use your intellect to understand the action of bir, that would get you closer, because then you understand the purpose, you actually understand the wisdom, or at least you get closer to wisdom, versus using the means as the end. It's like, oh, I'm going to do the sujood, and Allah will never. But if you don't think about the significance of sujood, what the inner meanings of it are, the things that are known, from hadith, or the things that aren't known, which, with your intellect you will actually achieve. I think that's what the word understanding, I think, is the biggest key. And to answer, I think your question, I think it's like you said, capacity. So maybe my Islam's capacity was, now is time to supersede. Forget the bir, go to the intellect. Since you maybe achieved a higher level now, use intellect now, and even go even advanced even higher. Since Imam Ali was pretty close to the Prophet, so he's like, let me advise you to get even closer. Use intellect now. So I think I do agree with you that as the people's capacity gets higher, the next step would be intellect, as you said.
That also reminds me, you know how there's like a philosophy behind every act you do. Like for example, you're such that you go down with death and then you get resurrected back again.
Or the turab, exactly.
Yeah. So it shows like how there's much more than just the superficial, like doing ibadah.
Yes.
There's much more beyond that.
Yeah, we have hadith, right, that say العالم العامل أفضل من 70 عبادا. That a person who is a knowledgeable, an alim, right, a scholar who practices, he is better than 70 worshippers, right? So what is that telling us? It's telling us that you can do your ibadah. Of course, there's nothing that's not putting down ibadah. That's not saying, oh, don't worship Allah, don't go do your salat, for instance. It's just saying that the level of someone who truly has that ma'rifah and that recognition is gradations higher, right? It's levels and levels higher than someone who's just worshiping Allah just on the sake of, hey, Allah told me to worship him, and I love Allah. That's different when you have a true ma'rifah and true recognition of who Allah is. It completely changes your ibadah. That's why, like, sometimes it's like you think about us, we're living in the 21st century. You like pray the salat here. Imagine, like, if you think about like the companions at the time of the Prophet, like when they prayed, like, these were all new teachings for them, right? That Allah is one, that there's no partners with Allah. When they said La ilaha illallah, it had so much power, right? Because they had that true recognition of what it means to be someone who doesn't accept La ilaha illallah. So the perspective is just completely different, but that gave them some more insights into that significance. And many of us, we take it for granted almost today, But when you actually take time to actually sit and deliberate and ponder about this, about like how blessed, how much blessings Allah has given us in this frontier to make us individuals who recognize the truth, then you can get closer and closer to that level where your ibadah takes more of a higher level of significance. Now you're really connecting with Allah. You're really thanking Him. Like when you're saying Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, you're really glorifying Allah. You're really saying Allah is beyond any type of imperfection because you've now reached that level of ma'rifah and understanding of who Allah is, right? So
I like how you said love as well. Think about like your parents. Since 3 years old to like 12 years old, obey your parents, obey your parents. You're like, oh, you try your best to obey your parents, right? But then as you get older and older and older, and then you realize like why. You realize what they were doing for you, especially as you become a parent too. Like right? Then you get the understanding, right? You start using your intellect to understand why. Then you'll be like, ah. And then the love for your parents, I think, I would assume, increase exponentially because then you really understand what they were doing and why they were doing it, what the purpose of the things they were saying was back then, and all the things. Versus your understanding when you were like a 7-year-old and he was like, hey, please stop playing video games for like 3 hours. It's not good for you. And I want you to come do this.
yeah.
And that relationship with Allah, not to compare it exactly, but I think that would be a similitude. Yeah.
So one last point here then. So it's very interesting because it says تسبقهم بالدرجات والزلفى عند الناس في الدنيا وعند الله في الآخرة, right? So it's saying that by using your intellect to get closer to Allah, right, you are going to actually get more elevated in the status of the people too. Amongst the people in this world, they're going to look at you as someone who has more rank, more status, more renown, right? So you will get closer and more elevated in this world, and then hereafter, of course, with Allah, you're very close in daraja than other people, But that's very interesting. So why do you guys think that is? Any reflections on that? How is it that we achieve closeness to people in this world through using our intellect?
Sorry to cut you off, brother. Brother Hashu had a question in the chat. He couldn't make it, unfortunately, but he had a question. He said, but what authentic evidence do we have that Mahdi is alive and we will come back? Is what he said. And he said keyword is authentic. Like, what's the what's authentic that states his revival, or not revival, his reappearance?
Yes. Okay. Inshallah, we'll get to that question. That's a very good question. Let's just finish up this hadith and we can talk about that. So what do you guys think about that?
What was the question?
So the question is, how is it that the Holy Prophet, he's saying this hadith to Imam Ali, that by exerting your intellect, by exerting your rational faculty to get closer to Allah, you will also get closer to the people. The people will actually recognize you and you will have higher status with them. How do you think what do you think is the connection there?
I think, I don't know, this could be a little vague, but I feel like the higher intellect, the more humble you are, because the more of the world you know. So,
It's a change of mindset.
like, yeah, like people that are like naive, they're in philosophy, they say this a lot, but people who are naive, who don't have knowledge, they just act reckless and like happy about the world. But people who have like, who study philosophy, they're just depressed, they just know too much, and it comes to like, they have greater intellect, and they're the ones that come out to be like professors that teach. So, what was I gonna say? Like, yeah, you get more humble by the more intellect you have, and then that makes people recognize you as a key figure.
I really like what you said about the link between humility and intellect. You know, the more intelligent you are, the more you realize that you're nothing. You know, and that makes people appreciate and honor you when they see that you're humble. Nobody likes an arrogant person, right? So that's a very good point. Any other points that you guys can think of?
Two verses, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah.
From Surah Al-Nahl 96 and 97.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry guys. So Allah says, "ما عندكم ينفد وما عند ما كانوا يعملون من عمل صالحا من ذكر أو أنثى وهو مؤمن فلنحيينه حياة طيبة ولنجزينهم أجرهم بأحسن ما كانوا يعملون." So the reason I brought these verses up, Allah says, I will just read the translation.
Yes, of course.
What you have runs out, but what God has endures. And we shall certainly reward those who remain steadfast according to the best of their actions. To whoever, male or female, does good deeds and has faith, we shall give a good life and reward them according to the best of their actions. So the reason I brought these two verses is because I feel like if you're intelligent enough to understand that at the end of the day, Allah is in charge of everything, as I kind of like mentioned earlier. Allah will take care of you in this life, so He will elevate you in front of others. So again, just because He's in charge of everything, at the end of the day, let's say, you can be, you can go from zero to hero like this, because if Allah wills it, He will do that in a second, and just because you will be humble in front of your Lord and you will obey Him, and He would, make sure that your life in this world is also as good as you treat Him.
Ahsantum. Very nice. Beautiful points.
Brother Faisal pointed out a key point. He said that we talked about this hadith that Dave was checking one time out. He said that whoever has taqwa in Allah, people will trust him and respect him more. It's like a simple equation. He says, from a personal experience, I don't think I've had a problem or a bad relationship with a movement, which it makes sense.
With the what?
With the movement. Yeah.
MashaAllah. Yeah, no, those are all extremely good points. I completely agree. I think people respect and honor you when you have taqwa, right? And when you're when you're someone who's principled and you stand up for what you believe, right? They respect that, right? But I think there's also something else. Any other thoughts? Any other brothers want to chime in? The relationship. The question is again the relationship between why being an intelligent person elevates you up. People respect you more when you're intelligent.
For the humility part, remember that there was a quote, I think, by Imam Ali that get enough knowledge so that you can know that you're not very knowledgeable. Like you don't have much knowledge. Just get that much knowledge that you know that you're not really knowledgeable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people who are really ignorant, they assume they know a lot, right?
That's the thing.
But the more you learn and the more you,
Just like what you said.
the more intelligent you become, the more you realize how little you know, right? Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I mean, but that goes back to the point that Brother Muhammad made about humility, right? When you recognize your own limitations and that I don't know something, and you tell people, look, I don't know, people respect that. They respect that you're not speaking out of turn, just making things up. You're actually speaking based on your own knowledge, right?
I think that's something Allah also propagated, where if he didn't know a question, even though he was such a big arif and a big philosopher, he still used to say, "I don't know." If he didn't know the answer to a question, you don't want to be Mr. Know-it-all. Like if you don't know, then you clearly don't know. And
Yes.
people appreciate that honesty.
Ahsant. Yes, no, completely agree. I think one other point that I'll add to the discussion is that human beings naturally, we like intelligence. We like people who are smart. Nobody likes to be called stupid. Nobody likes to be called ignorant. Everybody wants to be called smart, intelligent, right? Knowledgeable. Those are things that human beings naturally recognize as perfection, right? We naturally incline ourselves towards being more perfect, being more knowledgeable, being more intelligent, right?
We're creatures of knowledge.
Yes. So when someone is more intelligent, more rational, people look at that individual as more perfect. They look at that individual as someone who's worthy of emulation, right? Worthy of being respected because they have that level of knowledge, right? So the more knowledgeable you are, nobody will honor you the more ignorant you are. That's something that goes against human nature, right? It goes against.
These days, but
Yeah, but not. I mean, the natural order of things. Yes, exactly. Like some people, they feign knowledge, right? But naturally, the way the world works is the more knowledgeable you are, the more respect you earn,
And
right?
there's also a difference between someone who uses their rationality and their emotions. There's a huge difference.
Yes,
I'd
right.
like to add to the point you were talking about, or question. People also respect the ones that are more knowledgeable because they have someone to like seek help from, to seek help to. So, like for example, the imams, they help, or in this day and age, it would be like Sayyid Kashmiri, or anybody who's a high, or like
even you, man.
maybe
Mashallah.
I don't know.
Yes.
I'm not that intellectual, but inshallah. But it's they have I wouldn't say a leader, but somebody that could like help them answer their unanswered questions.
Ahsant. Yeah, very good. All right. So I think that's basically the main points that we can discuss with this hadith. Anything you want to add, Abdullah?
No.
Yeah?
Think, let's move on. It's up to you. I think since the way we designed this is to receive whatever questions and
Yeah.
discuss them, even though you do have like some kind of like structure. I think Brother Hashu's question was the authenticity of the reappearance of the Imam. Is that correct?
Or him being alive.
Yes, his question was.
Or both. We can say him being alive as well as his reappearance.
Yeah.
Okay, we can discuss that.
Here, I'll say it word for word so it's easier.
We
He
can
said, what
maybe 10
authentic
minutes and-
what authentic evidence do we have that Imam Mahdi is alive and he will come back?
Okay, so alive and then also reappearance.
Yeah, so those are two separate questions, right? Those are actually, it's like a two for type question. So the first question is, what is the evidence that Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam is alive, right? That's the first question. And then the second question is, what is the evidence that he will return, right? That he will come at the end of times, right? That there will be a Mahdi, right? So that's the second question. So I think it's best to attack this question in reverse, right? Because the second question is actually much easier to answer. And then the first question we'll also devote some time to. But the first thing that we should address is, what is the evidence that there is going to be a Mahdi, right? At the end of times. And this is actually very many verses in the Quran that substantiate this, right? It says, for instance, there's a verse in the Quran, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ, right? Allah has made a promise to those who believe and do righteous deeds that He will make them khalifas on this earth, right? When is that going to happen? Like, believers have not yet been made the khalifas on this earth, right?
They have, where are
Right?
they now? They if the 4 Khalifas were what happened?
Yeah, like when is that going to happen? When is that promise of Allah going to happen? This is Allah says, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Like Allah has made this promise to the believers. So when is that going to happen? That's going to happen when the Mahdi returns, right? So there's many other verses in the Quran, but this is one verse that we can use. There's another verse. It says, وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. Right? That indeed we had written in the Psalms after we had written in the Psalms after we had already written in the dhikr. The dhikr is a reference to the Torah, right? The basically the book of Moses. We had already written in the Zabur, right, in the Psalms of David, that my righteous servants will inherit the earth, right? So when is that going to happen? When are Allah's righteous servants going to inherit the earth, right? So
the question to ask is, have they inherited the earth?
Yeah. So when is that going to happen? That's going to happen when righteousness prevails over corruption, over evil, over oppression. And that is something that Allah's promising us is going to happen. It's inevitable, right?
Additionally, the verse where Allah says that there will always be a Khalifa of mine on the earth. Like that means there can't be a time on earth where there isn't a leader or a wali of Allah.
Yes. I mean, that Allah says, Inni ja'inun fil ardi khalifa, that Allah is going to appoint a khalifa on this earth, right? So all these verses point, right? They also point, there's another verse, very famous verse, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعِفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً وَنَجْعَلَهُمُ الْوَارِثِينَ. Right? That Allah says, and this is in the context of the story of Prophet Musa, right? That Allah is saying that indeed we wanted to give our kindness, show our lutf, right? Show our providence to the people who were oppressed in this world, people who were considered downtrodden. We wanted to elevate them, right? And we wanted to make them imams, and we wanted to make them the inheritors. When is that going to happen? When are the people who are downtrodden in this world, the oppressed, when are they going to take this position that Allah has promised them, right? So that's very clear. All these verses in the Quran.
Continuous too. It's not like he said all these verses are continuous. So if it has happened in the past, has it stopped?
Yes, right.
The Quran says it's going to continue.
Exactly, yes. And so these are all promises in the Quran that we find, right? That very clearly elucidate for us that this is something that's going to happen, that truth is going to prevail over falsehood, right? And so that's one portion of evidence in the Quran already based, right? The second portion is that all the different sects of Islam are actually unanimous that the Mahdi exists. Not just Muslims, but Christians also believe that there's going to be a Messiah. The Jews, the Zoroastrians, even the Hindus believe that there's going to be basically a Messiah of sorts, right? Every ancient religion believed this, right? So this is all pointing towards this being a universal truth. This is something that's universally recognized by every religion, that this is going to happen. And amongst Muslims in particular, we have many, many hadith. It reaches the point of what we call tawatur. Do you guys know what tawatur means? Has anybody heard that word? Brother Jibril, can you tell us what tawatur is?
Mass transmission.
Yes, mass transmission. Okay, what does that mean?
It was transmitted through so many people that it's very unlikely that it was fabricated.
Yes.
Mutawatir?
Yeah, mutawatir is the other name for it. Yes, mutawatir or tawatur. Yeah, they come from the same Arabic root. Yeah. So, but yes, but you knew the same concept, mashallah. Yeah. So it means it's what we call hyper corroborated, right? So let's say the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let's say he was alive today and he came to you and he told you that the Mahdi exists. Would Brother Hishu have any doubts? Probably not, right? If the Holy Prophet himself came and told you, right? So now let's say instead what we have is we don't have the Prophet today, but we have 150 people who all are narrating from the Prophet that the Prophet said that there will be an individual at the end of times who will come and establish justice after oppression has, reached its absolute pinnacle in the world. If we have 150 people who are all telling us the Prophet said this, can we be? What's the likelihood that all these 150 people just conspired to make up this story that, oh, the Prophet said this? What's the likelihood? 150 different people, all of different backgrounds, all in different places, different sects, right? Are all saying that the Prophet said this. So we can be very sure that this individual does exist and is going to come back, right? Because it's unanimously transmitted amongst all the different sects. So that's what we mean by tawatur, right? So that's another very key piece of evidence that we have about what we call the zuhur, or the coming of the 12th Imam, right?
Some people won't make that connection, right? They'll say, oh, yes, the righteous will inherit, but it's not one person. It's like there's 10 people coming. But
Yeah.
the hadith that Mutawatir makes it one person. One person is going to come and establish this state.
Yes, right. Now, the second question that we have to address, so I hope that that's clear, right? When it comes to the coming of the 12th Imam, that we have very evidence, right? That there's going to be the Mahdi. The Mahdi is going to be an end-time figure that's going to establish justice on this earth after oppression has prevailed, right? That, I think, hopefully, Brother Hishu doesn't have doubts on, hopefully.
Or any other people that are listening or anyone here. If you have
So,
questions, you can always
yes.
It wasn't a doubt, just a
Oh, of course, yeah. No, definitely. No, but I just mean to make sure that before we move to the next stage, that he feels that has been properly clarified,
It's okay. If you
inshallah.
have more questions, you can
Yeah.
always ask.
So, okay, so very good. So now the second portion is, okay, what's the proof that the Mahdi is alive, right? What's the proof that that's the case? So there's a couple of pieces of things. So this, when it comes to this question, our ulama have said that it has to do with what we call tarakum al-ihtimalat, right? So meaning that we get circumstantial probability from different pieces of data, different pieces of evidence within our literature, and when you stack them all together, right, each piece of evidence gives you maybe 5% confidence, 6%, 5 to 10% confidence. But when you stack all of those pieces of evidence together, you reach the point of what we call itmi'nan, that you become confident that this is the truth, right? So that's what we call tarakum al-ihtimalat. You basically accumulate all the probabilities until you reach a level of intellectual certainty, right? And so this is a key concept when it comes to aqidah that we should understand, especially when it comes to historical things. Let me give you an example, and then we'll come back to this question. How do we know that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was actually martyred in Karbala? How do you know? I mean, where's the proof? Where does it say it in the Quran that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was martyred in Karbala?
It's not in the Quran.
It's not in the Quran, so how do you know? Some historian is telling me. How do I know he's even reliable? I don't know about whether he's telling me the truth.
But I don't think it's some. I think it's many historians.
It's mutawatir.
It's many historians, right? It's many historians. Now each historian gives me maybe, okay, by himself, maybe a 2% chance, 3% chance. But when I stack them all together, I have so many pieces of evidence, right? So many different pieces of evidence, I line them all up together. That's called tarakum al-ihtimalat. I gathered all the pieces of circumstantial evidence to a point that I reached intellectual conviction that this happened, right? So that's how I become confident about, when it comes to history, many things in history, that's how you establish certainty about it,
That's
right?
how science works. That's how science is, right?
Yes.
Multiple trial and error, right? And you establish until you get close to certainty. You'll never reach certainty in science.
Yes.
But you will get close to it after having so much evidence that your confidence interval becomes,
This ties into brothers, mashallah, brother Namik's statistics background. Everything is based on confidence intervals, right? I'm going to accept. For instance, my alpha is going to be like 0.01. Like I'm willing to accept a 1% chance. I'm going to make myself a 99% confidence interval that my hypothesis is correct, right? I mean, that's how the world works, right? You can't. Yeah.
Hypothesis, alternative.
Yeah, you guys remember, you guys are all statistics backgrounds, mashallah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, but see, so when you decide a p-value, right? That my p-value is going to be 0.05, for instance, and that's as long as the p-value is less than that, then my hypothesis is confirmed, right? So that's how the world works, right? So at a certain point,
confirmed with that certainty. You have to be careful, right? Because there's still a 5% chance that you say, oh, it's still a chance, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean,
accept it. You have to do something in your life.
So this is a big misconception that people have when it comes to religion, right? They say, oh, you have to be 100% sure, 100% sure that this is the absolute truth, no doubt about it, right? And the thing is, the way that human beings understand the world, we base our understanding the world on what we call induction, right? So induction means you see a whole bunch of scenarios, a whole bunch of different basically incidences of something, and then you deduce, or you induce rather, you induce a general rule. For instance, I see Abdullah, I see he has 2 hands and 2 legs, right? I see Brother Hussein 2 hands and 2 legs. So then I see Brother Muhammad 2 hands, 2 legs. Human beings must have 2 hands and 2 legs, right? That's now my general induction,
Even though it's
right?
incorrect, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for instance, I see somebody who has 3 hands, right? Or a Siamese twin or something. Yeah, or no hand. Then I'm like, okay, well, I have to go back to my hypothesis and
define human being.
and redefine what is actually a human being, right? So, and then that way, so that's how a human being then builds up a conception, builds up a level of understanding of how he defines concepts, right? So that's called induction. That's how the human being understands the world. We're not God that we can look, at every instance in the universe and then say, okay, this is how things are, right? We have to look at the circumstances around us, make observations, and then derive a truth.
Or else we'll never get out of bed. If you
A
think
truth
the ground
claim,
can
rather.
disappear,
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, the ground's gonna disappear, and you haven't been a pattern that the ground is appearing every time you walk on it.
Yeah.
You'll never get out of bed. You'll be like, oh man, there's a 1% chance,
So now let's go to this question, because I know we're running out of time according to Brother Abdullah here. So inshallah, so the question about the birth and the birth, first off, the birth of the Imam, birth of the 12th Imam, and then his existence till the modern day, right? How do we prove that? So the first question is about, so again, we're even separating this question now into 2 things. How do we know that Imam was born? And then also that he's continuing to stay alive, right? So the first thing, when we look at this, is we have a hadith, very famous mutawatir hadith. Remember we said what mutawatir means? Hyper corroborated. So many people have narrated this that we can't really doubt that the Prophet actually said this. He says that al-khulafa'u min ba'di ithna ashar, that there's going to be 12 khalifas after me, right? Kulluhum min Quraysh. All of them are from Quraysh, right?
Some of it's umara, some of it's
Yes.
I wish he said
Other
Bani
words.
Hashim.
Uh,
That would be more
Would have been
specific.
more clear.
there may have been.
He actually did. He actually did. But the rawis changed it. Yeah. But regardless, the whole point is that this is something that the Prophet has, and we're the only ones who actually believe in 12 khalifas. The Shia Ithna Asharis are the only ones. Look at any other branch of Islam, they can't give you 12. They can't give you 12 in a row that are all righteous, pious people. Some of these, like the Sunnis, they include Yazid, they include Mutawakkil, they include yeah. And then they arbitrarily, they say, oh, you know what, we should skip Yazid. And then it's like, well, what's your basis for skipping Yazid? Oh, he was an evil man. So are you just deciding who you want to choose arbitrarily? Just 12, just hand-picking, out of all the people who've ever existed? It doesn't make sense. So we are the only ones who believe in 12 successive people, right, that came after the Prophet. Now, we have, the thing is, right, when you look at the people who is the misdaq, or misdaq is what we say in Arabic, what's the actual instantiation of this hadith of the Prophet, right? What's the real world application of 12 khalifas, one after the other, all of them righteous, all of them impeccable sources of knowledge that led the ummah, that were considered leaders, right? The only ones are the 12 imams, right? Now we have 11, let's say we take out the 12th imam for now. We have 11 imams, all of them in complete succession, one after the other, after the other, after the other. A pious son of the pious, son of the pious, son of the pious. Every single one of these imams was considered an absolute paragon of piety, a paragon of righteousness, of knowledge, right? Yes. Even the Sunnis have tons of narrations about our imams, and they all, even if you look at Sunni rijalists, right, their own books, the Sunni scholars who basically tell you about the imams and their status, all of them, they say they're at the highest level, highest pinnacle of piety. So you have all of these imams, right? So 11 in a row. What's the likelihood of that? For you to have 11 people in a row, even if you have let's say Sayyid Sistani, for instance, right? What's the chance that his father was a grand marja, his grandfather, his grandfather, his grandfather, his grandfather, every single one of them for 11 generations straight is a grand marja, right? When has that ever happened in history? It hasn't. It only happened with our 11 imams. And then the question is, okay, well, the Prophet said 12 imams, and we're now at 11, right? Does it make sense? Is it make sense that statement of the Prophet, which is mutawatir, is not going to be substantiated. If there is not a 12th one, there has to be a 12th one.
And also
right?
the fact that all 12 have consistent beliefs. It's not like the 4 imams where like one says pray with their hands down, up, however
Yeah.
it is, right? It's like a constant line of 300 years.
Yes, exactly. 300 years successively. It wasn't like there was one generation skipped, another generation skipped. 11 generations straight, where it was every imam was considered a paragon of piety, right?
Actually,
So-
consistent message, actually.
Yes,
Very-
consistent message. This is, I think, Sayyid Khamenei has a book on this concept of a 256-year-old man or something like that, right? Yes. So, anyways, okay, so that's the aqli piece, right? That we can already derive that there should be a 12th person, because otherwise this hadith remains unsubstantiated. And that 12th person should not be 10 generations later. That doesn't make any sense. Or 50, 60 generations down. It has to be the son of the Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, right? Otherwise, this misdaq of the 12, this actual instantiation of the 12 is not met, right? So that's from an aqli standpoint. Now, then we get into the other pieces. So that's one circumstantial piece of evidence, right? Gives us maybe 10%
Some people
confidence.
would argue against this, of course. If you say nuqaba, if you say umara, then it's like, oh, well, they're not successive. You know, if you say khulafa, then it'll be successive. If you say umara, if you say nuqaba, then it'll be like, oh, or asbat. If you say
Yeah.
asbat, like, or brands.
There's different sighas of this hadith, different forms, but the wording that's generally accepted by all Muslims is khulafa, right? So,
It has to be successful.
yes, successive, right? Successive individuals. So anyways, so now that's one, it gives us maybe 10% confidence. Then what do? We actually have hadith, multiple hadith from Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, and in our reliable books, our reliable collections, that Imam al-Askari had a son. And he showed the son to 40 of his companions. They all saw this young son, right? And he told them, Ishhadu alayhi bi anna hadha waladi. Know that this individual, give attestation that this individual is my son, right? So he made it very clear to his companions. Then on top of that, we also have narrations about Imam al-Askari alayhi salam that he did 300 aqiqas, right? You guys know what aqiqah is, right? So
No, what is?
so an aqiqah is when you have a child born, you're supposed to, on the 7th day, you're supposed to sacrifice an animal, right? And distribute that animal's meat to your friends, your companions, your neighbors, to basically tell them that I had a baby born, right?
To get the blessings out of it.
And it's supposed to be a way of blessing the birth, that by doing so, Allah will protect your child from any type of evil or any type of misfortune because of you showing that gratitude to Allah, right?
Is that 7 of them?
No, that's on the seventh day
Oh,
is
seventh,
when
yeah.
it's done. Yeah, but he did 300. He did this. You only have to do it once. He did it 300 times. So 300 times, that's a lot, man. You know why he did that? Because the Abbasids at that time. So first off, the Imam, he couldn't go out and just start saying, "I have a son. I have a son," because literally these guys would come and kill him, and they would kill his son too.
Pregnancy was hidden too. Like they
Yeah.
say that Narjis, like her body was in a way where no one could tell she was pregnant or not. Like
They would come and check if
So
they would check. Yeah.
So this is the other thing, right? So this is very clear that he had 300 aqiqas amongst his Shias to indicate to them that yes, I have a son. You should know who he is. So all of these were indications, right? Then we have even narrations that, for instance, when Imam al-Askari passed away, that his brother Ja'far al-Kadhab went and tried to recite salat over his body, salat al-mayyit, and tried to claim to be the next Imam. And a young boy came and pushed him to the side and said, "Oh, uncle, I'm more worthy of this status than you," right? So these are all very clear riwayat that we have. So we have a very strong naqli source. Naqli source basically means traditions, riwayat, right? Hadith that substantiate the existence of this individual known as Imam Muhammad ibn Ali, Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Askari, right? That the Muhammad, the son of Hasan al-Askari. We have very clear riwayat, and even Sunni rijalis have mentioned that this individual was born. Tabari, for instance, has mentioned that Imam al-Askari alayhi salam had a son whose name was Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi, and he passed away as a child. This is what he claims, right? So he claims that this individual passed away as a child.
But
But-
you know he exists. That's
We know the only thing we need to get from Tabari is that there was an individual, such an individual who was born, right? So okay, so we stacking up pieces of evidence now, right? So now let's say we reach a point where eventually we get the certainty that this individual was born. Then we have a period called Ghaybat al-Sughra, right? Ghaybat al-Sughra happened after 255 after Hijrah, right? That's the period. It started from then and it went all the way up to 339 after Hijrah, right? So that whole period of time was when Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam was in minor occultation, as we call it, right? During that period of time, he had four naibs, right? Four basically people who led the ummah or led the Shi'as and were his representatives, right?
and they had direct contact.
And they had direct contact with him. Now the thing is, during this period of time, they all had the same message. They never changed their messages, right? So some people, some very famous writers, they have claimed that actually this whole thing was a conspiracy. The Shias, they just made this up. These four nuwabs, they just popped up and they said, oh, we want to keep collecting khums and we want to, so they just made up this whole institution of, wukala and naibs and stuff. And they just started saying, oh, Imam al-Mahdi is alive and he's this and that. But they're just making things up. He doesn't really exist, right? So this is a shubha or a contention that some individuals have raised.
There is some truth because when we explore the other sects, there is some truth to what the other sects have done with
Yes, in terms of doing this, but we have very strong circumstantial evidence that these individuals were actually all being guided by one single person, and because this is first off, this is a period of like 70 years, right? Roughly 70, 80 years. This whole time they had the same consistent message. They didn't change. They didn't fluctuate in their views. The other thing is that you don't see them all coming from one family. They're all from different lines, different families, right? And so there's no favoritism, there's no nepotism here, right? The first two, Uthman ibn Sa'id and then his son Muhammad bin Uthman, they were actually both wakils during the time of Imam al-Askari, right? So that already, but Hussein ibn Rawh and Ali ibn Muhammad al-Samari, those individuals were completely unrelated, right? So amongst our four nuwabs, there was no, other than the first two, the other two don't have any type of relationship, and they don't have, there's even Hussein ibn Rawh, he didn't have any relationship to Muhammad ibn Uthman, to the extent that when he was appointed the naib, people were like, who is this guy? Like, who is this? Like, how did he become the naib? Like, we don't even know who he is, So that's to the extent that this whole system was not the case. It was not the case that this was some type of conspiracy, So
Crazy how it survived though, like this long.
yes, yeah. But all of these things are circumstantial pieces of evidence, and then you gather them, right? And then you see even amongst our very early imams, Imam Ali actually has himself many narrations where he says that there will be al-Qa'im lahu ghaybatun tawila jiddan. There's going to be the Qa'im, he's going to have a very long occultation, right? There's narrations from Imam Ali, there's narrations from Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam, from Imam Al-Rida alayhi salam, that there is going to be a ghayba, an occultation, so long that people will start doubting about his existence, right? So we have all these pieces of evidence, now you start stacking them. They give you each 5%, 10% certainty, but when you put them all together, then you reach the point where you finally intellectually accept that this individual is alive and he continues to exist thanks to Allah's providence, right? The other very important piece of evidence is Hadith al-Thaqalain, right? Hadith al-Thaqalain is mutawatir hadith. It says that the Holy Prophet, you guys all know, that he says, I'm going to leave you two weighty things, right? What are the two weighty things? Yeah, Kitab Allah wa itrati ahl bayti, right? The Holy Prophet is leaving you the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, right? Yeah. وَإِنَّهُمَا لَن يَفْتَرِقَا حَتَّى يَرِدَ عَلَيَّ الْحَوْض. And these two things, they're never going to separate from each other until they come back to me on the Day of Judgment, right? Until they come back to the Hawd, the pond of the Prophet, on the Day of Judgment, right? So, okay, the Holy Quran is still here with us. Where's the Ahlul Bayt? You're going to say that this hadith is wrong? Because this hadith says that they're never going to separate until the end of times, until the Day of Judgment.
What does that mean?
So what does that mean? Like where is the family of the Prophet then? Where are the Ahlul Bayt? Where are the individuals who are appointed as imams, who are the khalifas, who are supposed to keep this ummah going, right? So this is another very strong piece of evidence that we have that substantiates that the 12th Imam is persisting and existing amongst the creation right now, right? So the other thing is we look at many other prophets, for instance, Prophet Isa.
This is logical, not
Yes.
logical.
We look at, for instance, Ashabul Kahf.
Yunus alayhi salam,
Ashabul Kahf,
Musa
300
alayhi
years.
salam.
It's clearly identified in the Quran, right? So if you're going to doubt and say, oh, it's so far-fetched, a man living 1,200, 1,400 years, like that's so long, that doesn't make any sense. Well, the Quran is your biggest opponent then, because the Quran itself establishes that there were individuals who lived for very long periods of time. Prophet Nuh lived, labitha alfa sanatin illa khamsina ama. He lived for 950 years, right? And this is clearly recognized in the
I think
Quran.
even more. Labitha fihum,
Yeah.
He was with them for 900 years.
But maybe he lived even longer, right?
Also, from a scientific perspective, if you look at have you seen the movie Interstellar? Right?
Yes.
It's like where they go out of the Earth, where time is different in different places of the universe.
Time
right?
dilation.
Time dilation. Yeah, Einstein's theory, right? It's proven. So if you're closer to gravity, right, time passes by slower for you, but faster for Earth. So it's not like everyone So it is possible. You can outlive a regular lifetime if you follow that. Right?
Yeah. I mean,
it's not
Prophet Adam. There's different narrations. There's different narrations. It's not mentioned in the Quran, but I think some narrations say that he lived for 1,000, 2,000 years, something like that. Yeah,
And
but
also, sorry to cut you.
yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah,
I was saying the Prophet Isa,
Yeah.
he got raised to heaven, right? So
Yes.
he's still living, and Prophet Yahya, who was the other
Yahya?
one? No,
I think you're talking about Idris.
Idris.
Prophet Idris was also raised. Idris was also raised, and then Khidr, for instance, is another example. There's dispute whether he was actually a prophet or just Abdul Salih, right, a righteous servant. But in any case, there's narrations that say he is also persisting. He is also not passed away, and this is accepted. It's actually unanimously accepted. The Sunnis accepted and the Shia that this individual known as Khidr is still alive.
And then this distinction of only prophets can have these qualities, these impossibilities, these improbabilities, right? It's the Quran destroys that, right?
Yeah.
Mother of Musa alayhi salam, right?
Zulkarnain.
Jalut, Talut alayhi salam.
Zulkarnain.
What was that?
How long did they
Zulkarnain.
How long did they live for? Mother?
No, it's not about living. It's about having
Authority.
improbabilities in their lives, like having miracles or things that supposedly only prophets can do. These individuals actually have things that they've learned from prophets, from the knowledge of the prophets, and they actually can do. And the biggest one that comes to mind, of course, is the ilm min al-kitab.
Yes, the Asif bin Barkhia bringing the throne of Bilqis, right?
I mean, that's one of the biggest proofs against people that say, "Oh, these people can't have miracles." What do you mean they can't have miracles?
Yeah. There's a very beautiful argument made by Sheikh Mufid. Sheikh Mufid is one of our great scholars, right? And he lived in around 450 after Hijrah, right? So he said, these individuals that question the possibility of this, they really haven't read the Quran, because who's the individual who has the longest period of life? Longest individual, the person with the longest lifespan, right? Up till today, right? Iblis, right? Because he told Allah, Rabbi anzirni ila yawmi yub'athun. Oh Allah, give me respite. Let me keep living until the day day of judgment. And Allah said, قَالَ فَإِنَّكَ مِنَ الْمُنظَرِينَ. Then Allah is going to grant that to you. You're going to keep living. You're going to have respite until the day of judgment. So Iblis has literally been living for the entirety of humanity's existence, right? Even before that, he was alive. Until now, he's still alive. And we don't question it. We don't say, oh, how is that possible, right? Yeah, it's in the Quran. Yeah. So, I mean, these are all pieces of evidence that show that this is, first off, not far-fetched, and there's actually very, very strong pieces of evidence that we have. When we stack them all together, we reach this point of certainty that we know that the 12th Imam is alive up till this day.
Another tradition that we can also quote is من مات ولم يعرف إمام زمان.
Yes. Yes, ahsantum.
It's a powerful question to ask people, really. I'm not sure if it's mutawatir. I mean, that's
Yes, it's mutawatir.
Then there you go. I mean, it's a powerful question to ask, because you really have to answer that question.
Yeah. This is, Sheikh Mufid uses this also. He wrote a whole treatise. I wrote actually an article, if Brother Hishu really wants. There's on Iqra online. It's called Sheikh Mufid's treatises on the Mahdi. And you can find it on Iqra online. It's in two parts, and it goes through all of Sheikh Mufid's writings about Imam al-Mahdi. If you read that, you'll be convinced, inshallah. Yeah.
And also Sheikh Mufid, I think he was intercepted once, right, in a decision he was making. I forgot the whole story. But,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, like Imam Mahdi like stopped him or did something for him.
Yes. Yes. There's narrations about that, or there's a letter as well that was addressed to Sheikh Mufid. But there's contentions about its authenticity, that specific letter. And Sayyid Khoury has said that he doesn't put much reliance on this specific incident. But there's no doubt that he did a lot of khidmah, he did a lot of service for the sake of the Ahlul Bayt in defending the belief of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. And so
basically the translation is that whoever dies and doesn't know
of this hadith, yes. Man mata wa lam ya'rif imam zamanihi mata mitatan jahiliya. Anybody who passes away while not recognizing his imam, right? Then he has passed away as if he's passed away in the age of ignorance, right? Meaning you're like passing away as if you're not Muslim, right?
One time I told this hadith to a Sunni brother, and he said, "I'm gonna answer to Allah that the imam of my masjid was my imam."
and that's fine. That's fine because then he has to read the Quran, right?
Yeah, to see what an imam actually means.
Yeah, well, not just that, but in Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah will be like, all right, everyone goes and follows their own imam. If that's going to be the guy you're going to follow, it's okay. I'm not making fun of it. No, honestly. If that's the person that you think is the most knowledgeable at this time, okay. On the day of judgment, inshallah, I hope it will be sufficient. Yeah. Wallahu alam.
You know, but the way you can refute him is it doesn't say وَلَمْ يَعْرِفْ إِمَامَ مَسْجِدِهِ or إِمَامَ, مَحَلِّهِ. It doesn't say like the imam of his place or the imam of his masjid. It says imam zamani, the imam of his era, right? So that means each era has an imam. Each station in history, each epoch, basically.
The word zaman in the Quran, I think we should explore that a little bit more to understand. I haven't looked into that.
Yeah, but that's what the hadith says, imam zamani. This is a idafa construction, right? So the imam of his era. There's an imam for each period of time, right? So that's something that's, inshallah, this is a very, we could have like a whole halaqah just about this,
Books written about each question that you have is a book written about it.
Yeah, but this is like a very mukhtasar, very like brief overview, like survey of like how to answer some of his questions. But inshallah, if he comes out one of these days, we can talk more about it, inshallah.
No, if there are further questions, if you post them or if you put them on a group or if you...
Wait, sorry to...
Yeah.
I was going to say, so... just a clarification. So, Sheikh Mufi, he lived during the time of the like when the 12th Imam was around.
He lived during the Ghaybat al-Kubra. He lived at the beginning of the Greater Occultation. So he lived at around he passed away around like 430, 440 after Hijrah. So he was literally born at the start of the Greater Occultation. Because remember we said like 339 after Hijrah was the start of the Major Occultation. So 339. So he was born some years after that. So it was like in the beginning of Ghaybat al-Kubra.
And there was like narrated where he like received letters from.
Yeah. There's some narrations about him actually receiving a letter from the 12th Imam. So that during the minor occultation, much of the Imam's communication was through letters, right? So he would actually write, and this is another thing that's a corroboratory piece of evidence. His handwriting was always the same. So for that 75-80 year period when we had the minor occultation, every one of his appointees had a letter from him, and it was written in the same exact handwriting, right? So that's how people knew if you were actually a true wakil of the imam or not. They look at the letter and they look at the handwriting.
And also the seal, I think.
Yes, the
Has
seal.
any of these letters like survived like through time to the present day?
I don't believe so. No, but they have been narrated. But I don't think the physical letters are around anymore. No, unfortunately. Yeah.
Burned down Baghdad.
Yeah, there's so much loss of manuscripts, unfortunately, But these are all ways that we can be sure about the 12th Imam's existence.
How were you saying? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the refutation for what Hussein was saying. You told your friend the Imam thing.
Oh yeah, because the hadith says Imam Zamanihi. It doesn't say Imam Masjidihi. It doesn't say that if you don't recognize the Imam of your masjid, then you're gonna, like, it says Imam of of his time, right? The imam of the time. So that means basically your era has an imam. Your time period has an imam. Who is that imam?
It's beyond locality.
It's not a okay, just in my place of residence there's an imam. It's saying the
Like
whole
USA, but like
it's saying like each
universe.
period of time has an imam,
It's saying
right?
universe. It's actually saying
Universe.
Yeah.
It's actually crazy that the imam's name that he gave me, right? The imam was Masjid. He passed away like the next year. So it's like, who's your imam now?
We're not joking. You should ask him
He's
what
a permanent
criteria.
target.
When we say 12 imams, when we say Imam Zaman, so
Yeah.
you know, how do you know he's knowledgeable? How are you establishing that?
Wait, aren't there some narrations where it's like there'll still be like scholars in like hellfire or something? Is that true?
I mean,
I've heard one.
There's like wait, you're saying verses of the Quran or
Narrations.
oh narrations? Yes, people who claim to be scholars but they don't practice, you know, what they're supposed to be. And even I mean the Quran, actually the Quran even affirms this, right? That فَوَيْلٌ لِلَّذِينَ what is it? إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْتُمُونَ مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ وَيَشْتَرُونَ بِهِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا أُولَٰئِكَ مَا يَأْكُلُونَ فِي بُطُونِهِمْ إِلَّا النَّارَ, right? That it's talking about the Jews in this situation, right? That amongst the Jews were like scholars who they would hide what Allah has revealed, right? Allah has revealed something and made it very clear, and they try to hide it, right? So specifically about the Holy Prophet's birth and the Holy Prophet's prophecy that he's going to be the last prophet, they tried to hide the things related to his prophecy, so that they could fool the public, right? Say, this is a Ishmaelite. He's not an Israelite. He's not from the line of he's not from the line of Isaac. He's from the line of Ishmael, right? So he's not really the prophet, right? But they wouldn't actually show their their Jewish brethren the actual verses of the Quran or the actual verses of the Torah, the actual verses of Revelation that affirmed that this was the final prophet, right? So they would try to hide the truth. So these individuals, Allah says that they will get nothing except fire in the hereafter, you know. So this is a great example. Yes, you can be a scholar and you can still go to hell, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do Quran instead, you think? Yeah? Okay, inshallah. We basically did an Aqidah session, no? Something like that, no?
I think it's fine. Yeah.
What do you like? Keys to the kitchen? I just need to get some water.
Yeah.
You recite beautiful Quran, man, mashallah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Sorry. Good luck.
I'll figure it out.
Hopefully your first one.
It's
No.
That's how you find the key.
I won't
I
pass.
don't know the Arabic, that's not-
Mashallah, that's great, yeah. Were you reciting a lot in Azerbaijan, or?
not really, it's more like
If anyone wants water, you know.
That's great, mashallah. That's when I got into Quran too, when I got into college,
They'll
mashallah.
take you.
the funny thing people would tell me, you know, you're gonna go there, you're gonna go further.
You have
from
to
Allah,
wrestle
just
me.
found it.
Mashallah, yes. No, you surrounded yourself with good brothers, mashallah. I think that's super important. You know, surrounding yourself with good company, mashallah.
Inshallah, hopefully we'll hear his recitation. I think it's Rast. He's reciting in prayer, and I think
Yeah, I heard his Surah An-Nahl, and mashallah, he was.
Did it sound like it was Rast?
Yeah, it sounded like Rust, mashallah.
Because then I asked him, I was like, "What's his favorite recital?" He's Abdul Bas Abdul Salam. I was expecting Sudais or Shuraim or something like something.
Oh
I
yeah,
guess like the type is not really the case. It's like doesn't mean that I'm using his, you know.
No, but
But I just like the way.
so my question is like, how did you get to adopt that recitation then? It's curious. I'm
Like
not sure.
that sort of I'm from the masjids in Azerbaijan is that's
Oh,
the
maybe they were
way.
using Rust.
Maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
But the rest is like from different videos, I guess.
mashallah. Very nice, yeah. That's great. So we were covering Maqam al-Rast, and you know, just to give you guys, I think, just to make sure everybody's still on the same page. So we're covering the different melodies, the vocal patterns or the vocal tunes that are used to recite the Quran, right? And
15 minutes. I'm sorry.
oh, okay, inshallah. Like in terms of starting or like or just
15-minute session.
oh, 15-minute session. Okay. Yes. So we're covering basically the different tune patterns, right? And we went through so far. We said that there's 8 tune patterns, right? And we covered so far Hijaz and Bayat, and now we're covering Rast. and we've been covering Rast. I think the last time we did this was a while back, but yes, 2 weeks ago. But we had been covering Rast. So inshallah, I think what we can do, because we don't have a lot of time, maybe we just focus on Rast, and then we can practice Hijaz and Bayat if you guys want again. But let's just focus on
as knowing the difference. But I think Rast we should.
Yes. So remember how Rast goes? Does anybody remember?
I can hear it because I can hear the recitation of some of the qaris that you do it.
Yeah.
But for some reason I can't apply it.
So remember we said Rast has a pattern of what we call, it comes from the Persian word Rast. Rast means like truth, right? Truth or righteousness, right? It has that meaning, Rast. So, and in Arabic, when it gets Arabicized, it becomes Rast, right? And it has a sense of what we call istiqama, that you're like staying very firm and persevering and pushing through hardship, right? That's what Rast has, that type of, each maqam or each tune pattern has its own sense or spiritual kind of emotion that it gives you, right? So this is specifically when it comes to Rast, this is how the type of power it has. So I'll recite Surah Al-Fatiha in this maqam, right? And then inshallah, I'll go through with each of the brothers. If you guys want, you can try inshallah as well. So Rast, it goes like this. Right? That's Rast. Right? So for instance, Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Right? So that's Rast. That's Rast, right? And you can go at a high register too, but if you wanted to keep it simple, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. You guys want to try?
I'd like to give it a try, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah. Go ahead.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Good.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
That's very good. That was actually a very good Rast, mashallah. Excellent. Remember, also people do Rast, they use the Rast when it comes to adhan, right? So they say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, right? That's Rast. So if you use that maqam, right, it's a very spiritual maqam. It's a very spiritually uplifting, right, way to recite the Quran. So I think it's also very good for du'as too. You can recite du'as in this maqam as well. And you can go into the high registers as well, right? So Rast, you start like this, what we call qarar, or the lowest level. Notice it's kind of repetitive, right? It's almost circular, like it keeps going like that. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, right? Then you can go at a slightly higher register. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, right? Same maqam, but just a slightly higher register. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. That's a little bit higher, right? So you can keep going higher and higher and higher.
I feel like changing the pitches gets a little difficult.
Yes,
Trying to
yeah.
keep the tone in
So just work on the lowest level, right? And we can do more. And when you get more advanced, we can get into the more higher pitches. But just try to read the lowest pitch. So you recited the lowest pitch very nicely. Who wants to go next?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Very nice. That was excellent.
I'd like
MashaAllah.
to point
Ahsanta.
out, kind of felt like on the second ayah, felt like it was like bayat, Maqam bayat, because he ended it with like the same tone that he started with,
With Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim.
with Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.
Yeah, no, actually Bayat is very similar to Rast. It's just a very slight difference, right? So I'll read Bismillah in both Rast and Bayat so you can see the difference, okay? So Rast is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, right? That's Rast. Bayat Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, right? So Bayat is a little bit different. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. That's Bayat, right? Rast is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Bayat has more like short intervals of raising your voice.
Yes. And Bayat is also a little bit higher pitched. Rast, you go much lower. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. It has like a more up and down, right? Whereas Bayat, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Yeah. So that's okay. All right. Who wants to go next, brother Namik? You wanna recite?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
MashaAllah, very nice. Yeah, you are very good at Bayat, at Rast rather. MashaAllah, yeah. Rast is, yeah, MashaAllah. That's beautiful. Ahsant. All right. Inshallah, Brother Abdullah, then we switch to the brothers on this side, inshallah, yeah?
Sure. All right. I'm going to struggle this. Struggle gets rewards. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Ahsant, very nice actually, yeah.
What feedback would you like to I can improve?
Yeah, so I think one thing is don't be afraid to go a little higher with your voice.
Higher amplitude or higher pitch?
Higher pitch.
Pitch.
Yeah. So like صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين, right?
There's tune and then there's flat and then it goes back to tune.
Yeah.
You can
But I think it's because like you can do it, but I think you get nervous.
Yes.
So I think you got to keep it going that consistent pattern.
No, you guys are
MashaAllah.
pretty good, mashallah.
MashaAllah, yeah, I'm very impressed with you guys, mashallah. Very good. Yeah.
SubhanAllah, it's,
Yeah.
Even if some of the makharij aren't like perfect, the tune is amazing. Like, and I want to hear more of this in the mosque. Like, I don't want to just hear the same two people reciting Quran every day.
Yeah.
Actually, this is part of the reason why we're doing this. Is I want people to be comfortable to go up there and recite. And maybe you'll get one word wrong or another word wrong, but at least it'll just encourage you to go more and more and more, inshallah. Well, so I didn't say wrong. I said perfect.
Oh, okay.
My Maqam is not perfect. So I'll tell you that. So perfect.
Nothing's.
I was also talking. I was talking about myself too.
Inshallah. All right, brothers on this side. Brother Jibril, you want to recite?
I have nothing of value to contribute.
No, man. Let's hear it, mashallah, man.
Anytime people are meeting together, discussing Allah and reading the Quran, we all get value. No, man.
Inshallah, inshallah. Would you prefer we skip you? Whatever you like. I think I really don't think you should be shy, man. We're all here to learn.
Less verses,
Yeah.
you want to do like 3 verses.
You can skip me, but I'll be involved. I'm participating.
Inshallah, inshallah, inshallah. All right, brother Ani.
So can I get the tune?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Good.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Very nice, mashallah. That was very nice. Yeah, excellent. What do you think, brother Sarosh? You want to try?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Could you do the tune?
Yeah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Nice job.
Very nice, mashallah. Very nice.
I cannot
Excellent.
recite this way. I don't know. I'll but I think his name is Abdul Rahman Al Sudais.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's why I was asking you.
Yeah.
I was like, do you listen to Sudais or
No,
Shuraim or?
I like him though.
Yeah,
I'll just put it
because
in.
usually, because he was reciting the prayer, it was like almost like hearing Sudais or Shuraim. I was like,
Yeah.
and I was like, no, Rast. He's like, no. Okay.
I think it's this.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is a beautiful example of Rast, right?
That's Maqam of us.
Yeah.
الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
So that's such a rare version of him because usually whenever you hear him
It's very like
in the mosque, it's much a little bit. You can describe it as monotone,
yeah,
because the tempo's fast. He has
yeah.
a faster tempo in like the haram. He recites the Jama'ah prayer. That's interesting. It's a very like high pitch.
Yeah. And he pretty much only uses Rust. Like he doesn't use
Which
anything
is
else.
curious
Yeah.
because like I don't. Was he ever up in like the northeast of the Middle East?
So actually, you'd be surprised. You think a lot of these qaris actually know the maqamat, but they don't.
Are you
So,
serious?
Yeah.
Just imitate.
They do taqleed until they. Yes. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I
So
didn't know as well. Not
yeah.
like I imitate, but
yeah.
No, I cannot believe that.
Yeah. I'm telling you. Yeah. Most of they actually consider it a big bid'ah to know these maqamat. Yeah, they consider it a bid'ah, and they're like, this is not right, and we're just gonna recite, and so then they just learn from each other. But they're actually using the maqam. They just don't know. Yeah, they just don't know. But yes, it's a common thing amongst like.
Or at least the modified maqam.
It's a common thing. So the Egyptians, they're very into the maqamat, into they're yeah. but a lot of the Meccan Qadis have this,
Of course,
or Saudi Qadis in particular.
Like northeastern,
Yeah. No, this is like it's a big dispute actually. I never got into it with you guys, but yeah, there's a group of individuals who say, oh, this is bid'ah, and oh, yeah. Oh, had I? Okay.
You kind of mentioned that some people say it's haram.
Yeah.
But not this aspect of them naghma.
They do the naghma and they don't even realize.
They also say
yes.
it's haram to believe that it's a harmony.
Yes.
It's a weird discordance.
Yes. It's a big thing, but that's why they just say, okay, we're gonna beautify our voice with the Quran, but we're not gonna call it anything. If you put a name to it, then that's bid'ah. So
to everyone,
yeah.
I actually had a question. Do different qira'ahs like affect the speed of recitation? Because is that why like for example, Sudais is more common in like Mecca because like it gets things done faster, or because like is there any like difference or not really?
Not really. You can actually use Rast in a very slow as well. It's a slow type of recitation.
Like a different qira'ah, like for example, Abdul Basit does.
Yeah.
I feel that's more slower.
Yeah, so that's called mujawwad or it's called muhaqqaq, right? Muhaqqaq is very slow. So there's three big paces that are used for Quran. One is called hadar. Hadar is really fast, right? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. That's very fast, right?
Isn't that with Moom, or isn't that with the hadith that says you shouldn't read hadran, or maybe I'm incorrect. I'll try it.
If you can find it, yeah, I'd love to see it. But they do recite fast. There are a lot of people do it when they're doing muraja'ah, like they're doing their hifz and they're like trying to recite the whole Quran quickly. They'll recite like this, and you can read the whole Quran in like 12 hours or something. If you read like that. But yeah, but and then there's murattal, right? Murattal is like the way that we were reciting. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Right? Yeah. So that's murattal, right? And then muhaqqaq is very slow. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Right? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Right? That's called mujawwad or muhaqqaq, when you read really, really slow like that, right? So a lot of times when you're reciting the slow pace, it's preferred to use bayat, right? So you'll see people, they'll always start Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, right? They'll use that specific tune, right? And so but in general, you can use any maqam in any sort of tempo.
People like mix like multiple qira'ahs in one, like
multiple maqamat. Yes, you can. You certainly can. You can go from one maqam to the next, and there's a way, what we call tanaqqul, right? Tanaqqul is going from one maqam to the next. There's certain pitches you have to go into to, kind of maneuver into the next maqam.
There's also mixes that you described.
And there's mixes, yes, where you can start in one and kind of end in another, right?
Is there any preference over which qira'ah you use, like from any of our imams? Or...
No. So these are not qira'at, right? So qira'at are actually a different thing. So you have qira'at and you have maqamat, right? So maqamat are the tune patterns. So qira'at are actually they each have their own tajweed rules, right? So it's like slightly different ways of reading the same verse, right? So like you might have, if you ever heard Abdul Basit, right? He might say like, الذي خلقك فسواك فعدلك. He say فعدلك, for instance, right? He does tashdid on the dal, right? Or like for instance, Maliki Yawmiddin, Maliki Yawmiddin. That's an example, right? That's called a qira'ah, right? So that's different from a maqam. Maqam is a tune pattern, right? Maliki Yawmiddin versus Maliki Yawmiddin. That's a short alif or short fatha versus a long alif, right? Malik versus Malik, right? So that's called a qira'ah, right?
And that changes meaning too.
It has meaning, yes. It changes the meaning, yeah. So, but these are all examples. So there are, like for instance, there's a very famous verse of the Quran, Surah Yusuf, I think, and there's like 10 different ways to read it, right? What is it? وَرَاوَدَتْهُ الَّتِي هُوَ فِي بَيْتِهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ وغلقت الأبواب وقالت هيت لك وقالت هيت لك وقالت هئت لك. You know, you can say it so many different ways, right? And so Abdul Basit has like a famous recitation where he reads the same verse in like 10 different ways, right? Yeah. It's a very famous, and actually he reads in Rast. He reads this specific bit in Rast, you know. But you can find it on YouTube. It's very nice,
We
actually.
can do one more short surah.
Yeah, that's fine.
In Rast.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like towards the
Let's
end.
have you pick. You're the honored
Surah
guest
Baqarah.
tonight.
Whatever you guys want, inshallah.
If you consider short,
The last two verses of
Well, if that's short, then what's long?
some people
Last verses, last two verses of Surah Al-Baqarah. Perfect. Okay.
I was thinking we can do the last surah.
So brother Namik has asked us to recite the last two verses of Baqarah.
Okay.
And so this is called Ayat Aman al-Rasul, right? Yeah.
So now we know what short means for them.
Yes.
Half a page of Quran. Short. Mashallah.
MashaAllah. No, the more you strengthen your relationship with the Quran, the better. You know. So it's never.
No. That's we're gonna follow what you do. Let's
It
go.
gives you more practice the longer the
That's
verse.
fine. And
You know where
actually,
it is?
there's a lot of power.
It's page 49.
There's a lot of power actually in these.
I really don't know.
verses. In fact, if you want to be protected at night from a lot of badness in terms of internal or external,
Before you go to bed?
Before you go to
Yeah,
bed.
I do that. That's why I know it by heart.
to recite the first.
I think Brother Jafar had us memorize this in his class, but
Really?
now I forgot it.
That's sad.
Yeah.
If you
I
recite the
just
first
remember the
page,
first few words.
I just
was
know
like,
it's like fast, but like I can't really do it. So
Yeah.
the first page of Surah Al-Baqarah, you recite the Ayat al-Kursi, the three verses of Ayat al-Kursi.
yeah, life often.
Yeah, and then you recite this one from Lillahi ma fis samawati ma fil ardi. You start but then 284. Then that's how you get protection.
Yeah. Ahsant. Okay. So inshallah, I don't know if we shall we recite the whole thing and then everybody gets a chance, or what do you would you like?
Some of us may not be familiar with this these verses, so we could do one of the verses if you want.
yeah, we can do that.
Or what we can do is we can do one of the verses, and you can if you would like to recite the entire thing. No, because I would like to hear.
No, we can do it
Please.
like that. Like if you want to read the entire thing,
Yeah,
do it.
Sounds
If you
good.
want to do it, we
Yep,
can do.
yep, that's perfect. Let's do
Yeah.
that. Whenever you want to stop, you can stop.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Okay. So let me just read it and then we can just go around, inshallah. Just to give you guys a sense of how it should go, okay? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. So I went into high pitch, right? So, yeah, it does. It happens naturally. But if you wanted to read it just straight, آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. So inshallah, you guys can continue that same pattern. But go ahead, Brother Namik.
آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وسمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا وأخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إسرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين.
Very nice, mashallah. Excellent.
I'll try to read only 285.
Okay, yeah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسوله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسوله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير.
Okay, very nice. Ahsant, very good. Mashallah. Yeah.
Even though
Very
it's a
good.
familiar verse, I assume. Although apparently you guys memorized it. Wallahu a'lam.
Mashallah.
I'll go next.
Go ahead.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين.
Mashallah, very nice. So you actually went into a little bit of saba at the end.
Yeah, I kind of lost track.
Yeah. No, it was you recited beautifully, but you should read like this. أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. Can you read that like that?
أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين.
Very nice, mashallah. That's the perfect tune. Yeah. So you went into saba. Saba is like this. أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. Right? It's like a little sad.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a sad tune, right? So, but it's a beautiful maqam. Actually, a lot of Iraqis they like this maqam. When you're reading like Dua Kumain, right? They use this like وبرحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء, right? وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء. They read like that, right? So, but you got the rust, mashallah. At the end, I think you deviated a little, but then you came back, mashallah.
I think if you do like step by step each
Yes,
line,
yes.
like I'll imitate it better.
Yes, mashallah.
And it's not necessarily wrong. If that's the feeling that you had in the end, which is actually it is sadness. Actually, if you read the meanings of in the last verse.
That's why I was like, subhanallah, that's beautiful the way you're reciting. Yeah, it was still very beautiful. Yeah.
maybe you actually went into that.
That actually is the best way to read these lines. To read it with either in Hijaz or in Sada. You know, those are like the best tunes to use. Do you want to go, Abdullah?
Yes. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين.
Nice. Yeah.
Better than before, probably.
It's better. It's better.
But
Yeah.
what's your feedback?
Still
flat.
I think it's still yeah, but that's okay. That's okay, mashallah.
We got to work on that larynx, man.
Yeah.
You improved a lot. Like,
Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
So remember the thing I told you about the octaves, right? So if you practice that, that'll give you that more vocal range.
That's fun,
Right?
like a closet to do it.
Yeah.